11. MK38 Bushmaster. Today, we're going to examine some of the best and most powerful guns in the world. Some of these guns are used on naval vessels, while others are used on vehicles. Then there are those that can be directly carried into the battlefield. They vary in shape and size, but these weapons pack a punch. Now, let's get into some of the most powerful heavy guns in the world. You can find the MK38 Bushmaster on certain US Navy ships. It's a 25mm machine gun that's used on various ships for self-defense purposes. According to the Navy's website, the MK38 Bushmaster is used against fast attack crafts and fast inshore attack crafts. This gun is way too heavy for infantry to carry it into battle because it weighs nearly 300 pounds, 136 kilograms. Other than naval ships, it's been used on Bradley vehicles in the US military. The gun is 9 feet, 3 meters in length, and it can fire 25mm rounds in single shot or burst mode. It has the ability to fire a maximum of 180 rounds per minute on automatic. And as a secondary function, the MK38 Bushmaster can fire 7.62mm rounds and can fire 500 rounds per minute on automatic. This weapon has an effective range of 7,500 feet, 2,286 meters, or 1.4 miles, 2.2 kilometers, which is pretty impressive. And according to the Navy, the MK36 Bushmaster has a Mod 2/3 guidance system that's capable of stabilizing the gun. It can be remotely operated and has an electro-optical sensor and fire control system, as well as an auto-tracking guidance system. 10. The M240. Viewed as the most reliable machine gun in the world, the M240 is an Army's best friend. The original version of this weapon was the FN Mag, which was built in Belgium during the 1950s. The US-built version of the M240, however, is a gas-operated, belt-fed machine gun chambered in the 7.6251mm NATO round. Ammunition is fed into the upper left side by a belt. This no-nonsense weapon delivers some 950 rounds of ammunition per minute, so if you want to put down some suppression fire, then grab an M240 and see what happens. The US military loves this weapon, and it can be carried into combat, armed on a chopper, or placed on a vehicle. It was 1977 when the US military incorporated this weapon into its arsenal, but it was placed on tanks. By the 1980s and 1990s, the M240 saw an expanded role. This weapon is now used by the Marines, Navy, and Coast Guard. It's not just a reliable gun for the US military either. It's used by various armies around the globe. For example, the Spanish military used the M240, and it's been used by the Ukrainian military during the Russian invasion of their country. 9. The M60. If we're talking about the M240, then we definitely need to discuss the M60, aka the Pig. You're likely familiar with this weapon if you've watched a Vietnam War movie or any action movie from the 80s or 90s. The US military started using the M60 in 1957, and it was also used during the Vietnam War. But this gun was viewed as heavy and awkward to use. Plus, it had plenty of cons. It wasn't reliable on the battlefield when dirty, and that's how it was given the nickname the Pig. But what's the design of the M60? According to Military Today, the M60 is an air-cooled, gas-operated machine gun that operates from an open bolt. It uses disintegrating metallic link belts, typically holding 100 to 200 rounds, and it comes equipped with a built-in bipod. It is also adaptable for mounting on a tripod. The accuracy of this weapon depends on if it's mounted on a bipod or tripod. On a bipod, the M60 can get targets as far away as half a mile, 1 kilometer, or 2,600 feet, 800 meters. But on a tripod, this weapon can get targets as far away as 0.7 miles, 1.1 kilometers, or 3,600 feet, 1,100 meters. 8. AK-630M M2 Duet. This rotary cannon beast can be found on Russian vessels. The AK-630M has 6 30mm gun barrels. It also has an MR-123 radar detection and tracking system to take on aircraft and helicopters. But what's even more impressive about this gun is that it's an effective tool against mines. This weapon is found on certain Russian vessels such as aircraft carriers and mine hunting vessels. And due to the size and weight of the AK-630, it can only be used on naval vessels. It fires 30mm rounds at a rate of 4,000 to 5,000 rounds per minute. Some Russian ships have more than one AK-630 on their ship, meaning that they can fire 10,000 rounds per minute. So certain targets can be destroyed in mere seconds. The AK-630M has a mount that's fully automated. It can also be remotely controlled by an operator from either the control console or via a remotely mounted gun sight. This weapon is generally mounted in pairs, with as many as 4 pairs mounted on the larger ships, providing an effective defense. An issue with the AK-630M is that they have short engagement times and require multiple volleys to effectively eradicate a threat. However, their damage can be compared to that of an artillery fire. It has an effective range of 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers. Countries like North Korea, Ukraine, India, and Egypt have the AK-630M on their vessels. 7. The MG3. The Rheinmetall MG3 is a German machine gun that was used during the Cold War era. This weapon has been popular for over 60 years. The MG3 is a better version of the MG42, a machine gun used by the Germans during the Second World War. One of the changes from the MG42 to the MG3 was the swap to the 7.62 by 51mm NATO cartridge as their standard rifle round. The United States, British, and French militaries tested the MG3, but none of the countries added the weapon to their arsenal. However, the gun is used today by militaries in Australia, Mexico, Italy, and Argentina, just to name a few. This incredible weapon is an automatic, air-cooled, belt-fed, short recoil-operated firearm. And according to Military Today, the MG3 lacks selective fire capabilities, offering just safe and fire settings. Achieving short bursts or single shots effectively relies entirely on the shooter's skill. Standard weight bolts allow the MG3 to fire 1,000 to 1,200 rounds per minute. But with a heavier weight bolt, the MG3 fires only 800 to 900 rounds per minute. If you designed a gun, what would you call it? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's move on to number 6, the M2 Browning. 6. M2 Browning. It's time to review a weapon that's been beyond reliable for the US military. This 50 caliber machine gun has earned the nickname Ma Deuce. According to Coffee or Die magazine, it's seen action while affixed to the wings of P-47 Thunderbolts during World War II. They were installed on riverine boats patrolling the Mekong Delta, and they were also mounted atop Humvees cruising the embattled streets of Mogadishu in Baghdad and Kabul. This weapon was the brainchild of John Moses Browning, the man who not only created the Ma Browning, but also created the Model 1911 and the Browning automatic rifle. The history of the M2 goes back to World War I. The US military needed a machine gun that could be used against infantry, aircraft, and tanks. So, the M2 entered service in the 1930s and has been used in every war since. The M2 is a belt-fed, recoil-operated, and air-cooled machine gun. This is the type of weapon militaries want for offensive and defensive purposes. What's really great about the M2 is that it can be ground or vehicle mounted and can serve as an anti-personnel and anti-aircraft weapon. In post-combat surveys, soldiers rate the M2 among the most effective weapon systems in their small arms arsenal. This weapon has been upgraded over the years, and the US military shows no signs of making this weapon obsolete. It's capable of single shot and automatic fire, and the rate of fire for this weapon is 450 to 600 rounds per minute. It can even hit targets as far away as 1.1 miles or 2 kilometers. The M2 is a beast against light armored vehicles, certain types of aircraft, and small boats. 5. GAU-8 Avenger. The Gatling gun was a 19th century wonder, so it's no surprise that its descendant, the GAU-8 Avenger, is feared on the battlefield. This weapon has a self-sustaining fire system and has the ability to do unbelievable damage to the enemy. Interesting Engineering says that at the heart of the gun's design, there's a concept that's both fearsome and ingenious: 7 barrels rotating around a central axis. Each one is guided by meticulously crafted cams in order to execute an accurate cycle of loading, firing, unloading, and reloading. Unlike its predecessor, which utilized a hand crank mechanism, the GAU-8 employs 2 hydraulic motors that orchestrate a synchronized ballet of destruction with its barrels. The GAU-8 is used on the A-10 Warthog, an aircraft designed for close air support of ground forces. This aircraft has been incredibly reliable for the military for many years, and the reason for that may be the formidable GAU-8. Amazingly, this gun has the ability to fire 50 rounds in 1 second, which makes it capable of firing a mind-boggling 3,000 rounds per minute. 4. Gatling Gun. As we mentioned before, the GAU-8 can be traced back to the Gatling Gun. And if we're going to talk about the most powerful heavy guns in the world, then let's look back at this 19th century classic. Richard J. Gatling, a North Carolina native, was the inventor of this magnificent weapon. According to information from the Encyclopedia Britannica, Gatling devised a cluster consisting of 10 barrels. Each barrel was loaded and fired once during a full rotation when rotated by a crank. Gravity and the camming action of the cartridge container, positioned directly above the gun, were then used to load the barrels. However, when this gun was first introduced during the Civil War in 1863, the US military was less than impressed. The Gatling gun was operated by a hand crank mechanism and could fire 800 to 900 rounds per minute. And although the US wasn't particularly impressed, this weapon was used in battlefields and it was placed on ships. 3. PMM 1910. The Maxim Pulemyot Maxima 1910 PMM machine gun is a classic Russian firearm. Russia needed a great machine gun in their arsenal after the Russo-Japanese War, which took place between 1904 and 1905. The PMM 1910 machine gun was then released in the year 1910 and had an effective range of under 1 mile, or just under 5,000 feet, 1,500 meters. This gun was mounted on wheels, required a crew of 7, and was known to turn the tide of a battle once fired. It could discharge 450 to 600 rounds per minute, and even came with an additional shield for soldiers, since they were targeted by the enemy. Jonathan Ferguson, keeper at the Royal Armouries Museum in Leeds, said that the weapon is exceptionally effective for defending a stationary position, performing just as effectively as it did on the Western Front. An opposing infantry section will face significant challenges when trying to assault a position fortified with one of these. One interesting footnote on the PMM 1910 is that, according to Forces.net and BBC News, troops in Ukraine are using this weapon following the Russian invasion. 2. M230 Chain Gun. The M230 is an autocannon used on Apache helicopters. Developed and tested during the 1970s, the M230 is an electrically driven autocannon that fires 30mm rounds. They can be fired at 625 rounds per minute, and there's an effective firing range of just under 1 mile, 1,500 meters or 1.6 kilometers. But the M230 is able to hit targets 2.5 miles, 4,000 meters or 4 kilometers away. As per Northrop Grumman, the M230 was initially created to aid in anti-armor, border control, as well as maritime missions. The M230 also offers the capability to substitute 50 caliber machine guns on lightweight platforms, transitioning from a suppressive role to an offensive mission profile. This is an effective weapon on the Apache helicopter. This twin-engine helicopter can go up to 184 miles per hour, 296 kilometers per hour, and can be in a combat situation for 2.5 hours. It's armed with 16 Hellfire missiles, 76 2.75-inch or 7-centimeter rockets, and of course, it has the M230. According to Northrop Grumman, the M230 isn't limited to the Apache helicopter. Presently, the M230 is used on a range of military vehicles, both domestically and internationally, including joint light tactical vehicles, striker vehicles, and mine-resistant all-terrain vehicles. 1. M61 Vulcan. The M61 is a 6-barrel rotary cannon that fires 20mm rounds with the capability of firing 6,000 rounds per minute. This weapon can be driven hydraulically or electrically, and it's been around since the 1950s. It was developed as an efficient weapon on the military aircraft and has an effective firing range of 2,000 feet, 600 meters. The M61 saw quite a bit of use during the Vietnam War because they were on F-105 Thunder Chiefs and F-100 Super Sabres. Military jets that use the M61 today include the F-22 Raptor. We've now given you a glimpse into the world of heavy machine guns. And one thing is for certain, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what we see with some of these awesome weapons. Are there any weapons that we failed to mention that you'd like to learn about in a future video? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.